All right, in this session of the 5G Monetization Forum, we're going to discuss millimeter wave for consumer 5G monetization. So with that, it's a pleasure to introduce Stephen Rose, Executive Partner, Bell Labs Consulting.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. Delighted to be here today. So what we're really going to have a look at is one specific study that we did very recently. And the reason why we did that study is because there has been a lot of discussions about whether there is actual value in 5G millimeter wave, how to derive that value, whether it's a complementary or a competing technology against the macro space, et cetera. And particularly, of course, that some of that discussion has been around 5G millimeter wave versus sub-6, for example. But other technologies, clearly, is it additive or is it somehow subtractive? So we really set ourselves a specific goal, and that was to ask one kind of question: can telecom operators serve 5G subscribers with profitable and technically superior technology by investing in millimeter wave? And if so, where would those applications actually be, and what is the return on investment for that? So before we go into some of the details of the study, I think it's worth just going over some of the issues that the industry has been presented with when considering millimeter wave as a technology, and most of them are fairly well documented. We've got issues of limited coverage and some challenging propagation issues. We also have some issues around the lack of assigned spectrum and design devices and networks for that matter. So in Europe, for example, where this particular study was focused, we could see less than a handful of networks have been marketed with this particular technology in hand. But by contrast, if we look on the other side, we can see that the benefits of the technology are very well understood as well. If we look at the millimeter wave performance of Verizon's network, just at the Super Bowl yesterday, we could see that there were fantastic uplink and downlink speeds that were achieved, and it was very, very clear, and from some of the studies that have also been done recently, that there's great potential for hot zone and indoor locations. But there still is that remaining question in people's minds: what's the business attractiveness? Where do this particular technology add value to existing macro layers? Yeah, and if so, what are those conditions and sensitivities for success? We also take a little bit of a look at the way in which some of the technology has been moved into. So 5G is a broad technology being moved into the marketplace so far. We can see a couple of benefits, but we can also see a couple of challenges that come with that. One of the things that we see in Asia and in the Americas, for example, is that there has been an offering of unlimited plans, and the predominant, which has been the predominant approach that has been used by the operators, and these plans have offered increased speeds and feeds, and they tend to induce customers and end users to increase their mobile data usage. Yeah, so that's a positive in many respects, but of course there are some issues that come along with that. But generally speaking, we've seen a positive uptake. If you get higher increases in speeds and feeds, then customers have been more willing to move on to higher plans. And the other thing that has an intrinsic effect on subscribers' behavior, because as they move around the world and they adopt different technologies, as they adopt the technology and the plan in combination, they worry less, I should say, about some of the issues of moving between different types of access, whether it be Wi-Fi, moving back onto 5G or 4G, and then back off to Wi-Fi. That's sort of issue of seamless connectivity and seamless experience doesn't really happen there. So again, moving people onto these tariff plans and these new ways of experience is a positive thing. But nevertheless, the issue still lies: how do we uniquely monetize? So we set us out, that's where we set about ourselves to figure out where does the value actually happen. And we did that from a number of different methods that we brought together. One is we at BLC, Bell Labs Consulting, got a list of over 150 5G use cases. So we looked into each one of these and we started to classify them as to where do they make sense primarily for B2C markets in the markets that we were actually looking at. And we were looking at markets across UK, France, Spain, Russia, Germany, and Italy. We were looking for key indoor, outdoor, and FWA opportunities. And the second thing we did is we did a detailed TCO analysis for the revenue for a given operator, and that business case had a certain level of sensitivity around that. So we assumed that the operator that we were dealing with had about 30% market share. And the second thing we did is we started to look at where the specific opportunities laid or lie, I should say. And you can see on the left-hand side, there is enormous growth areas in both traffic and opportunity, of course, that is conversed with that. And we looked at homes and offices, train stations, outdoor hotspots, indoor malls, and many different stadiums. So what's the upside of that? The upside is there's huge demand in mobile data. We could see there's absolutely enormous expectation of growth in traffic over the course of the next few years. So you can see the huge, the 129% growth on the right-hand side for a typical operator that we were assuming during the period of 2021 to 2026. So if there wasn't demand for traffic, clearly there wouldn't be necessarily a desire to pay. So that's the first thing we looked at. The second thing that we looked at was where the revenue potential was. And so what we did is we started to actually then define what types of services there were, where would be the uptake, and what would be the sensitivities around that. And you know, to get to the point of the result of the study, we could see that most operators of the profile that we experienced would actually be able to achieve an 8% growth in the top line. Now that's massive, and if we think about the amount of money that has been generated in the market over the last few years with new technologies, it would be that would be a hard statistic to sniff at. So the question is, how do we actually get to those results? So, you know, we see that there's lots of traffic. We see that there's a financial opportunity and an positive economic outcome. What does that look like? So the key thing that we actually focused on was, and what we'll do is we'll focus on one particular case for this presentation, which is the one of hot zones. And that the reason why it's worth doing that is because that's a clear distinction from bundling into existing macro tariffs. The key outcomes or the key insights that we made in the study is that the business viability of millimeter wave is highly sensitive to certain factors like subscriber density, size of the hot zone, and penetration of the millimeter wave devices. So hot zones refer to the specific areas identified by the telco operator as high density locations where capacity needs are estimated to be substantially higher, and the telco operator foresees a business opportunity of monetizing that data. The picture on the left shows that a sweet spot can be found, an optimal zone for that. And that sweet spot to address subscribers is in the range of 1,000 to 3,000 subscribers per hotspot. And focusing on that hot zone would then enable the customer to actually address, you know, that higher density opportunity. Of course, if you go outside of the sweet spot on the left-hand side, naturally the attractiveness of the market starts to become far less interesting, and similarly all the way down to the right-hand side. So getting that sweet spot and understanding the sensitivities for optimal payback was absolutely key to the study. If we take this then and we actually take the results and we apply it to one specific scenario that we looked at, and that was Gare du Nord, we could find that there are a number of different opportunities that came along with it. One was, you can see on the left-hand side, it was a 75% less cost per gigabyte versus sub-6 at the hot zones in the busy train station. So that first, the cost imperative is absolutely there. The second opportunity that we saw was that the end user applications in the hot zone were multiple. There were multiple strategies to position and upsell the technology because people were, generally speaking, able to receive a very, very rich service in a short period of time. So you can imagine if you're just simply traveling from Gare du Nord or any other major train station to somewhere else for a long journey, which it generally is, and you want to download a movie very, very quickly, or you want to be able to experience some other kind of rich but very, very heavy data content in a short space of time, that would be the optimal technology to do that. And the third thing that we found when we did the ROI on that was that there was a payback period of less than 4 years. And that's a very, very positive outcome for this type of technology. So we're very excited about this. We think there is a phenomenal opportunity going forward, but there are a number of key changes in which the operators would need to shift towards in order to address the market opportunity. And clearly what we can see here is micro level of studies. So you've got to understand very specifically the environment that you're going to be working in, and you've got to understand where the footfall actually lies and what types of devices and behaviors you see. It's a very different way of actually planning macro networks. So in summary, I think that the outcome for us on the study was clear. Millimeter wave strategies had significant value to subscribers and CSPs alike. There is opportunity to work with blends of network technologies to lift subscribers into higher value tariffs with mixes of B2C offers relative to the venue that they are. And one key outcome of this is that the subscriber has to be conscious of the experience that they're receiving. If it's heavily bundled into another service, maybe the subscriber doesn't quite understand why or how they're actually getting a different level of service or experience. The second one is there's opportunity to uniquely monetize the service. You can take that service, you can apply it to different scenarios, and then you can offer it as a consumption model, or you can actually have it as a short-term bundle, or whatever it happens to be. But of course, you can also take that later on into the B2B environment as well. So we're quite excited that the unique opportunity rather than the bundled opportunity is there. And the third lesson, and the third sort of realization that we came to was, and we realized this in the process of our own work, is that when you're deploying the technology, you need to completely rethink the strategy and the planning cycles to assume that the assumptions for the willingness to pay and the ROI are precise. And that really means understanding, like I said before, the footfall, the customer traffic, the way in which people behave in that particular hot zone. When you start to do that, then you can address the monetization opportunity much more succinctly. And that's it. Thank you very much, and pass you back to the team.
Thank you very much for taking us through that presentation, Stephen. We've got time for maybe one or two questions here. I think you gave us a real good breakdown of the B2C opportunities in these localized hot zones where operators might invest in millimeter wave, but could you maybe expand on the B2B opportunity? What are you thinking there? Is it a wireless failover or fixed wireless, IoT?
It's definitely, both of those. If you can imagine fixed wireless IoT, in a place like Gare du Nord, for example, the amount of data and the amount of signaling that will be happening between IoT devices for safety, productivity, and efficiency on those particular in those particular locations will be very, very high. So I think there is an opportunity for dual advantage with the technology. So you either can take if you were the train operator, you might be able to consume the technology and offer it to customers as well as use it for your own opportunity, or you could buy it obviously as part of an offer from a CSP, and then you could resell it as well. So definitely the B2B opportunity is there.
And then I got a question from the audience here. Thank you to whomever submitted that. But the question is just, Stephen, if you could give us your appraisal of the millimeter wave ecosystem maturity.
It's still there. It's still growing. I think there is a big difference between, let's say, macro level technologies that have broad appeal to ecosystem investment. I think this is a difference between, let's say, demand versus supply led economics. So I think what I do see, and I see, an absolutely fantastic collaboration between many of the chip manufacturers like Qualcomm, for example, and the likes of CSPs to educate the market and actually drive new levels of awareness on the technology itself. So I think there is some way to go on this, but I think the big difference between what we're seeing now versus what we saw previously on microcells is a massively different level of coordinated effort. So I'm very hopeful for this.
And we do have time for one more question here. And this calls back to an earlier session where there was a little bit of discussion around the advancements that are being made in millimeter wave repeaters and then the implications that has for densification and economics that go with it. But just any thought on the role of repeaters in making the economics of this even more attractive to operators?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are companies out there that have substantially invested in the technology to make the end-to-end link budget far more attractive. So again, I think that's a major step forward. I don't have any necessary specifics to hand in terms of the ecosystem around that, but I have seen a number of companies make some significant growth in the development of new technologies and the price point associated. So clearly, all of those things additive generate a far more interesting business case.
Excellent, Stephen. Well, it's a really compelling and really important bit of research that you and your colleagues worked on. So I appreciate you taking the time to share it with us here at the 5G Monetization Forum.
My pleasure. Thank you.